final. This is event number 71, and our lane assignments are as follows. USC is in lane number 1. Lane 2, Washington. Wisconsin is in lane 3. University of Michigan in lane 4. Notre Dame in lane 5. And Oregon State University in lane number 6.
Washington, Wisconsin, Michigan, Notre Dame, Oregon State.
The grand final, we have an alignment, and the starter has pulled the cruise. We're moments away from the start. The wind is shifted off to the port bow in these boats, and alignment is a little more tricky than it was earlier in the morning. Still very light breeze. Just now starting to see some ripples on the water. The referee is waiting. Wisconsin coming around, Washington coming around. Notre Dame, hands are up, the hands are down. All hands down.
Going to a countdown start, starting with 5 down to 1, then the start command.
The starter has decided to go to a countdown start.
4, 3, 2.
She's in her starting
1.
count sequence.
Attention. Go.
Flag up, flag down, and we have a start of the women's JV final. All boats have cleared the starting stake boats. And as we push across the 100-meter mark, we look outside to the Wolverines from the University of Michigan, followed closely by University of Washington and USC, then Wisco, Oregon State. Notre Dame is hanging tough themselves. So right now your early leader is Michigan, followed by University of Washington, who has a half a seat on USC. USC and Notre Dame basically dead heat at this point for that third spot. Wisconsin just down a little bit, maybe half a deck. The Oregon State Beavers are down by about 5 seats at this point. Still your early leader is maintained University of Michigan, who in the settle has pulled out to another 2 seats advantage over the University of Washington. Washington, Notre Dame, and USC are fairly level at this point. Wisco just a click off the back. Then outside to the University of Oregon State. Here's our big first moves now by Washington, starting to pull back in on Wisconsin, on Michigan. And as we cross the 500, Michigan still maintains a half a deck lead over Washington. Washington 2 feet over University of Southern California. University of Southern California is 4 seats over Wisconsin, level with Notre Dame, and then outside to Oregon State. That's your call from the 500.
Race number 71, the Women's Collegiate JV Grand Final. And looking at lane assignments quickly, USC is in lane 1. Washington is in lane 2, and they are competing for the lead. Wisconsin in lane 3. Currently on the lead is Michigan after getting an excellent start. Lane number 5 is Notre Dame, and Oregon State in lane number 6.
Well, the University of Michigan women obviously hugely stoked by the victory of their varsity 8 in the Jessup Whittier Cup. Took off like a bat out of hell, and obviously have big aspirations to add this race, the title in this race, to the title that their senior women have already won. This, of course, is junior varsity 8s, the college's second 8s. Not only is this a huge training vehicle for producing the varsity 8s of the future, but it's also, the results of this are super critical to the continuing assessment of clubs and their programs with regard to team bids to the Women's NCAA Championships. So this is important racing that's going on here. None of these crews are going to give up lightly or give any inch of water lightly at the moment, and based on the results of yesterday, there is nothing at all hardly covering any of these crews. The only crew that might prove to be slightly off the pace based on yesterday's results is the University of Notre Dame, but they are giving the lie to that by their performance here today.
Well, Charles, Michigan probably got one of the best starts that we've seen in racing today. They just fired off the line, and currently they are taking advantage of that particular situation. However, they're being challenged by Washington and Southern Cal along the shoreline. Wisconsin has fallen back after an early challenge, and then to the outside, Notre Dame and Oregon State. But the very impressive start of the University of Michigan has certainly boded well for their situation and their position at this time.
Yes, it looks like they're maintaining a lead, but it looks as though they're being challenged by Wisconsin. They're Midwest rivals from the state almost next door, facing each other across Lake Michigan, and it looks as though Wisconsin may have moved through them, and it also looks as though the University of Washington may have charged to the lead and taken a lead in the race, not to discount University of Southern California, who seem to have a very respectable JV8 this year and are challenging also.
As we approach 500 meters to go in this race, Michigan continues to cling to the lead, but they are stroking hard and trying to hold off Washington. Washington very slightly moving up and possibly has popped into the lead here. Wisconsin has dropped back to third position with USC along the shoreline, certainly not going away, as are neither the boats out in the 5 and 6 spot, Notre Dame and Oregon State. But Washington put on a heck of a charge at about 750 meters to go, and it looks like they have eclipsed the University of Michigan. Washington here in lane number 2, Michigan out in lane 4, and in between them, Wisconsin still competitive in this race, with Southern California along the shoreline being challenged on the outside by Notre Dame and Oregon State.
Yes, Washington has certainly asserted their superiority. Wisconsin threw down a challenge to Michigan, may even have overtaken them at some stage, but Michigan are pushing back at them, and may actually have eked out a lead of inches over their cross-lake rivals. But don't disregard the University of Southern California, who are sneaking up in lane 1 and may actually have taken Wisconsin and be challenging Michigan.
This is Washington on the lead in lane number 2 on the outside. Michigan being challenged by Wisconsin and USC. Then to the outside, picking up the pace, is Notre Dame holding off Oregon State. It is Washington on the lead. Washington being challenged on the outside by Michigan. Wisconsin trying to get into the hunt, and USC coming strongly along the shoreline. It is Washington with about a 6-seat lead. To the outside, Michigan hanging on, but here comes USC. USC has stepped in front of Wisconsin. It is Washington, Michigan, USC, Wisconsin, a boat length back to Notre Dame and Oregon State. Checking on our leader. Unless something drastically goes wrong, it appears to be Washington on the win here. It appears that Michigan may have held off the charge on the outside, and it'll be awfully close to call between Wisconsin and USC. It appears that it may have been USC sneaking in there for the third spot, but it's too close to call. Some are saying that it was Wisconsin. So our preliminary call is the University of Washington number 1 and Michigan number 2. Then Wisconsin and USC in a photo finish at 3-4 with Oregon State on the outside 5 and Notre Dame 6.
Before we get to the next event, let me just give you the official results of the Copley Cup Grand Final. A win for Cal in 5:51.8. Second, Washington, 5:52.6. Third, Harvard, 5:53.9. Fourth, Stanford, 5:56.3. Fifth, Brown, 6:03.7. And sixth, Princeton, 6:07.0.
A quick note with that thrilling finish, there are DVDs available of each individual race. If you would like to have a DVD of the exciting coverage with the 7 cameras up and down our shoreline and the outstanding commentary